here? Why now?
You know, I didn't leave because of you, right?
Are you aware this gentleman has been out here for almost 2 days?
Yeah, I know. He's my father. He's fine.
You've got to stop shaming this. It's the only way it'll ever get better. But before that can happen, you've got to stop being ashamed of yourself.
What's up, everybody? This is Fred Ricciani. We have right here on the line a very special guest. She is an actor, a producer, a singer, and she is one of the stars of the brand new drama film out right now on demand and on Blu-ray by the name of Marcus from JR Poli, also starring Owen Miller and Paul Wight. We're talking to the incredibly multi-talented Katana Malone. Katana, thank you so much for the time. How's everything going?
Going great. Thank you so much for having me. That was an amazing intro.
Hey, I do what I can. Now, before we dive into Marcus, it's a pretty deep subject matter and everything else. Did I get all the job titles? I feel like there's a few more I've left out.
There are a few. I'm actually also a middle school teacher.
Oh, wow. Okay, amazing. And from what I understand, too, also a mother?
I am. I am a mom.
Amazing. Above all else, props to you. So before we dive into Marcus, how do you kind of balance everything?
I kind of incorporate, different titles into different things. Like my daughter's on set with me sometimes. I incorporate filming into my classroom. So I kind of blend everything together and make it fun for everyone.
JR Poli, the director of Marcus, had mentioned that some of his kids were actually in the film. Was your daughter in the film as well?
No, she wasn't. At the time, she was still kind of like pulling back from the acting. She was a little nervous because she had done her first red carpet, and she was like, "Oh, it's so intimidating." And I'm like, "All right, I'll give you a little break." But no, she was not, and his kids were amazing.
Now, you play Gaby and Marcus, the daughter of the main character, Marcus, played by the great Owen Miller. And this is a very deep film that tackles depression, tackles mental health, it tackles hope and father and daughter relationship. Without giving too much away, how did you get linked up with Marcus, and when did you know that this role of Gaby really spoke to you?
I actually met the cast of Marcus at a film festival like 2 years before I actually auditioned. And I was there for another film that I was in, and I was hunting them down after I saw Marcus. I'm like, I have to talk to them. I have to find out who they are. And I remember approaching JR and Owen and saying, hey, that had to be by far the best short film I have ever seen. And it was, kind of just a casual conversation. I wasn't, asking about a full length. I wasn't asking anything. I just said, what inspired you? Do you plan on doing anything further in this type of, in this category of film? It was just so powerful to see. And I just had to say something. And then about a year and a half later, he messages me and he's like, can you really sing, or are those videos like just you and your daughter? I'm like, no, I can sing. Why? And then I found out he was making a feature, and I auditioned.
And it's interesting. I had chatted with JR before, and he had mentioned to me that you have never sung professionally before, which stunned me. If you watch the film, spoiler alert, you do sing in the film, and you're great. And he told me, like, yeah, she's never sung professionally. I just heard her, and I asked her to sing. So Marcus was the first time you actually sang professionally on camera on stage?
It was funny because when he mentioned it, I was like, yeah, I sang. Why? And he's like, well, your character has to sing. I'm like, okay, I'll take it out of the shower and I'll bring it into the studio. And I was in the studio for about an hour, and I recorded 3 songs in an hour. And he was like, whoa, you really can do this. I'm like, yeah, I just, I'm a fan of like being in the background at the time. So I'm like, I don't want anyone to know that I'm singing for real. And it's funny that you say that because everyone that I know that's seen it looked at me like, dude, how long can you sing? Like, we've never known. I'm like, yeah, it's, hidden talent, I guess.
So now that you kind of come out of your shell and you expose the world to your amazing singing talent, have you looked into doing some more music, or at least some more musical roles?
I actually am. I would definitely love to do some more music. I know that JR and I spoke about doing an album, and it's crazy that he didn't tell you this, but the songs that I performed were actually his music because he was in a band a few years ago, and this was all his music that I was redoing. And I looked at him and I'm like, oh, so you have the hidden talent as well. You just kind of threw me in there. And it was fun because he didn't know that we were using his music, his old music. And when he heard it, he was like, whoa. So yeah, going forward, I could definitely see myself. It kind of broke me out of my shell doing Marcus.
That's awesome. And it was an awesome film, very deep, very powerful. How did you prepare for a role like this? Obviously, I'm sure you did everything as far as line memorization, everything like that, getting in character. But there's some really deep and dark subject matter here. So did you have to go to a different place compared to your other roles?
I remember reading the script and looking at JR and saying, "Who are you?" Because it was so close to my real life. The relationship with Marcus, the experience with dealing with someone with mental illness, my own father, actually, um, even the pregnancy, like all of that was real life. Like if you've seen the beginning, the end, that is exactly what I've been through. So I looked at JR and I'm like, dude, this is like, I had goosebumps. I'm like, how did you know? And he's like, I had no idea. So even that last scene, I was he cut and I was crying for hours. Like I couldn't stop because I was still in that moment and I hadn't been in that moment in 12 years. And it was like reliving every experience all over again.
And it's crazy because he also told me that a lot of that story is based on his own real life and his own battle with depression, which he's thankfully overcome. And he was telling me that Owen Miller, the lead, almost didn't do the film because it was also too close to home for him. So the fact that it, I don't know if coincidentally is the right word, happened to resonate so strongly with you, with Owen, with JR, the director. Do you feel like that this film, as it's seen by wider audiences, will touch a lot of people and really open up some more conversations about mental health?
I think it will. If the people close to me that have watched it, I've had conversations with men who saw Marcus and decided to have a conversation about how they've been dealing with depression. It kind of opened them up to now feel like, okay, I'm seeing it on screen. I realize I'm in the same situation. I need to talk to someone. So it's powerful in the sense that everyone that watches it will somehow resonate with it, whether it's the family aspect, whether it's the mental health aspect, whether it's the pregnancy aspect, whether it's, the financial. There's so many things that are talked about, especially now when people are, having a hard time with the way the market is. It's a really powerful story in so many ways.
Now, as far as your journey, it has to start somewhere. So we know that you didn't technically sing, quote unquote, professionally until Marcus. You've been doing acting for well over a decade now, have a very impressive resume. But where did it all start for you?
It started as a child, to be honest. My father was in the army and we moved almost every year of my life. And because of that, I was very like interested in books and fantasy and vampires and all that kind of stuff. So every time I moved, I created a new character for myself because it's like it's an opportunity to start over. So I'd go from like being super nerdy to super preppy to being gothic to be like every year I would switch my type of personality. And I was just like, you know what? One day I want to be a lawyer or I'm going to be a doctor or I'm going to fight for Earth in Mortal Kombat. Like these were my aspirations. And I said, the only way that'll happen is if I'm an actress, because then I can do all of those things. So actually, after having my daughter and going through what Gabby went through, I said, this is a wake up call. I'm going to pursue acting.
It's one thing to take acting classes and get on stage or do extra work or anything else. But when did you realize, like, okay, like, no matter what's going on in my career right now, I do have the ability, I have that confidence where if I am called upon to do a lead role like you were in Marcus, that you can do it?
I think that hit me when I got the confidence in myself to do it, because I started off in the industry with some serious self-esteem issues. When I had my daughter, I started off at 115. At the end of my pregnancy, I was 300 pounds. So I had the self-esteem issues with my weight gain and it's a tough industry. How you look is important, all of these things. And it wasn't until my mother actually started to pay attention that I was like, okay, mommy thinks I can act. Maybe I should do this, because your parents are your toughest critics. So I'm like, all right, well, I'll pursue this, and it's just been exciting ever since I started taking on those roles where I went from background to maybe a featured role or, I just started to accept myself. And that's what made it easier for me. I was always afraid, oh, I've got locks. Nobody's going to want me. I've got tattoos. No one's going to want me. Oh, I have a nose ring. All these things I was limiting myself. And I'm like, you know what? Take it or leave it. There's acting behind the look. So just go from there.
For sure. And do you feel like these days that it's a little more accepting in general as far as like acting goes when it comes to people of color or mothers or people with kids or just any kind of situation and everything, like especially now with so many different platforms and the need for more representation and the need for more content?
I think it is. It's a lot easier now in the sense where people want fresh content. You know, they don't want to see something that's unattainable. I feel like we're at a point now where if we're watching a love story, we want those people to look like us. Now, I'm not saying anything against, the beautiful people, but we're more likely to relate to something where those characters look like us, or they make us feel like we're actually in the story. And once we start to realize that there are actors out there who may not look like what we're used to, but they're powerful actors, it'll still bring that story that we want. Like I've seen some really, really, really great independent films from little known actors that I'm just like, why is this not mainstream yet? So I think we're getting to that point, and now having those different platforms available, it's easier for those actors to be seen.
Definitely. Now, of course, people could check out Marcus on Blu-ray and video on demand right now on all major platforms, but we do always like to ask all our guests some kind of random and rapid fire questions just to get to know them better. Are you ready, Katana?
I'm ready.
All right. Since you mentioned Mortal Kombat, who's your favorite Mortal Kombat character?
Katana.
Of course. There we go. There we go. I'm assuming you got a lot of Mortal Kombat jokes or references as a kid.
Yes, I've always heard. Yeah, all the time.
Right. It's a cool name though.
Thank you.
Favorite late night snack or cheat meal?
Gummy worms.
Were you a gamer growing up? You mentioned Mortal Kombat.
I was, and it's crazy because now she is like, just to see it, I'm like, God, was I like this? Yeah, I was.
What's she playing now?
She's on Fortnite right now.
Okay.
Yeah, so V-Bucks is like every week she wants V-Bucks.
Have you had to do any of the Fortnite dances yet?
I have not. I don't even. I tell her, I'm like, you guys have a different level of games now. This wasn't my thing. I'm like a old school Need for Speed, like Grand Theft Auto and Mortal Kombat. You guys, I stick to your Fortnite, so I'm good.
I feel so old now that you mentioned that Grand Theft Auto is old school, man. Damn. But yeah, it's true. It's true. Oh man. Who are your all-time favorite actors and actresses? Were there any people that really kind of inspired you to get into the arts?
I'd have to say Taraji P is up there because she was a single mother. She made the move to LA and she hustled to do what she needed to do. And when I started, I was also a single mom. And, people were putting limitations on me for that reason. And watching her process and watching her growth was very inspiring. I can also say, obviously, Denzel Washington, Viola Davis. God, there's so many. There's so many. Yeah, I'll leave it with them for now.
Hey, all great choices.
Thank you.
Is there one movie that you could watch over and over again for the rest of your life?
The Professional. Leon the Professional, Natalie Portman's first film. When I was that around that age, if you asked me what I wanted to be, I said I cleaner because I didn't know it wasn't really a thing. So.
If I recall correctly, you didn't have any scenes with him, but what was it like working or being around Paul Wight? For those that don't know, Paul Wight's the Big Show, WWE legend, wrestling legend, 7 feet tall, well over 400 pounds. He's all muscle these days, but I would imagine you haven't worked with anybody quite like him physically and just personality wise. So what was it like working with Paul?
It's crazy because I actually did not work with him on set, but I've had several, meetings with him. He and I have had several conversations. We've met up together since we filmed. And what sticks with me is the first time I met him, we were at a screening and he just walked up to me and his face is red. And he's like, "You were amazing." He's like, "Do you see how big I am? Do you see how big I am?" He made me cry. I'm like, okay. I had no words because I'm like looking up at him like this and I'm holding his hand and his hand is bigger than both of my hands. And I'm just like, "I made you cry, really?" He's like, "You are amazing." I don't know how, like, just to hear those words from him, because I used to watch wrestling as well. You know what I mean? So to hear these words from him, I'm like, I was flattered. I'm just like, oh my God, really? You thought I was that good? But yeah, he's amazing. He's a softie. He's such a softie.
I love that. And on that note too, about the cast and crew, how important is it to have a good support system around you? Because it seems like JR is a very encouraging guy. And I think he's kind of humbled by a lot of the things that he went through in life. Of course, Owen as well. And those guys have been tight for a very long time. Everybody there seems to be like family people and everything else. So how important is it to kind of have that support system of people who really kind of relate to what you're going through, not just, as an actor, but as a mother?
Even the depression side, believe it or not, I've gone through that as well. There are times where, and it's crazy because I would have never expected it, but from the minute we started working together to now, if someone's going through something, it doesn't matter what time it is. I can call JR can call me, JR can call Owen. Like, we've developed into this really strong, friendship. And even with our kids, like, my daughter gets around JR and she's elated to be there. It's important because you realize that not only is this, a passion project for all of us, but it's a real thing. Like, everything is genuine. Like, people don't understand that I've worked on so many sets where you do it and that's it. You never speak to these people again unless you're doing some type of promotion. But this has become like a genuine family. I remember when he moved, he told me he was moving. I was devastated. I'm like, dude, who am I going to talk to at 3 o'clock in the morning? He's like, oh, it's New York time. You can still call me, so it's still, it's so important.
And I love that you guys all kind of had that connection and everything. So I think it's safe to say, without giving too much away, you'll probably be working with JR and friends in the future.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I watched his interview where he mentioned, that he always writes a role for Owen. And it's funny because after we did that hospital scene, he came up to me. He's like, anytime I'm doing something, anytime I will write your role. I'm like, okay. He's like, can you stop crying now? I'm like, okay. It's gotten to that point. Yeah. Anytime he's doing something, I want to be a part, whether I'm behind the scenes or in front of the camera. I love working with JR.
I got to ask you, I know this film is very serious, dives into some deep, dark subject matter and everything, but looking back, were there any kind of awkward moments on the set of Marcus when filming? Is there a most awkward moment when filming Marcus? Something that maybe at the time was a little chaotic, but it's kind of funny in retrospect?
So I used to smoke little cigars, Black and Miles, and we had taken a break and I was on the side of the road while they were setting up the next scene. Now, mind you, my character's pregnant. So you can imagine I've got this big cigar and this belly. How people used to come up and be like, miss, you probably shouldn't be doing that. I remember JR being like, yeah, maybe you should stay in the backyard so people can't see you. even the club scene, like if I had a drink, it's like, oh, should she be doing that? So it was funny because I looked like I was actually pregnant and it threw so many people off.
So I'm assuming there were several scenes that were also filmed on location. So there are people like, well, what the hell's going on here?
Yes. Yes.
Oh man, that's hilarious. But hey, yeah, you weren't pregnant, so it was all good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh
fun. Man. What's the best piece of advice you give for success for any aspiring actors watching or listening to this?
Believe in yourself. Don't take anyone else's opinion to heart. And to follow the route that works best for you. Because I've only taken one acting class in the last over a decade that I've been acting. And in this class, all he did was give us a script and tell us to make it ours and just do it. Like, he would take the lines. I don't want you to memorize them. Just read the story and go for it. Make it yours. And find a technique that works for you, because one person's class might not work, whereas someone else's will. Also, if you don't get the auditions, make your own content. We live in a society now that's heavily on social media. Make your own content. Write yourself a few lines and throw that as a reel, and you never know what could happen from there.
Great advice for sure. As a content creator, I absolutely appreciate that. Why should everybody watch Marcus?
I believe everyone should watch Marcus just for a few reasons. One, if they are, currently dealing with something, or they're heavy-hearted in any type of, mental illness of their own, it helps you to realize that you're not alone. If you are a family member of someone who is dealing with mental illness, it kind of gives a perspective on what they're going through to better understand how to help them. Not saying that you have to be, a psychologist, but at least to be more aware of how they feel. And just to have that bit of hope, it's a rough movie from beginning to end, but it still has that hopefulness to it. So I feel like by watching Marcus, it'll give you, a reason to realize that maybe those distractions are actually a good thing, you know? So I think it's an excellent piece.
Definitely hope people checked it out. Marcus available now on Blu-ray and video on demand. Bonus question. Was there anything you wish I asked you in this interview?
Not really. I thought you were gonna ask me to sing, which is great that you didn't. So
No, that's okay. We're not going to ask you to sing. If you want to hear Katana sing, okay, you can follow her on social media, or you can, of course, watch Marcus. And speaking of social media, where can we find you online?
I am on TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter at Katana Malone.